Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome to another Wednesday night show where we're going to talk about some real estate. And we have an interesting topic tonight. I always like to keep them interesting and relevant. So last week we were talking about kind of what the Trump administration might mean for the housing market and looking ahead to 2025 and how maybe some of those policies might affect the next year and even further out. And we're going to continue that trend today by talking about the fate of the 2025 housing market. So it's about this time of year when we start talking about predictions, we start looking forward, and we start talking about what we think the market might do in the next year. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So as always, if you guys have any questions about what we're talking about, or if you just have a question about general real estate, pop into the comments at any time. I'm always happy to hear from you guys, and I'm happy to discuss whatever you guys want to talk about. Additionally, we're looking at doing something new for next week, but we'll talk about that when we get to that point. We are coming up on Thanksgiving holiday, which we'll be skipping a stream for that, so that everybody can be with their family and enjoy. So as always, if you guys are new to the stream, welcome in. My name is Joe Pareca. We're gonna be talking about real estate tonight. Drop a comment, let me know where you're watching from right now. I'd love to know where you guys are watching the stream from. Hey, David, good to see you. We got David Matney in the house. How are you, buddy? Hope you're doing well. So we're gonna get started here and share my screen really quick with you guys. We need this one. Okay, so we're talking about the fate of the 2025 housing market. I know it sounds like this very, this mammoth topic that we're going to talk about, but essentially what we're going to be talking about and focusing on this evening is interest rates. And, unless you've been literally living under a rock for the last, a couple of years anyway, we all know that interest rates have not been favorable for home buyers and home sellers, but really ideally, home buyers. And interest rates have really accelerated. And not only have they accelerated and gone way up, but they've been just all over the place, up and down and switching, and people don't really know. And then the Fed finally cuts rates and interest rates dip for like a week or two, and then they go back up. So we'll be talking about that as well. We're gonna start off by explaining, kind of what the Fed does, and also why interest rates maybe don't match what the Fed does when it comes to rate cuts. So we're going to talk about, basically we're keeping it to interest rates tonight. So hopefully we'll be answering your questions when it comes to interest rates and how that might affect the market. Now, keep in mind, obviously, and I say this all the time on my stream. So for the new people in here, keep in mind that, we don't actually really know what's going to happen. No professional does. So I know there's a lot of real estate YouTubers and mortgage lenders that do a lot of YouTube videos. And just keep in mind that when you watch their stuff, including my own stuff, you have to realize that we don't actually know what's going to happen. And we can hypothesize, we can guess, we can look at data, and we can analyze. But as the old saying goes that I hate so much, we don't have a crystal ball. But it would be really cool if we did, because then we would know what to do. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about rates. These are just guesses. And while they're educated guesses, they are just guesses. And especially when it comes to rates, the housing market and the financial market and the general economy, we're in a little bit of a limbo. And that has to do with our presidential election. And obviously, we're not getting into politics on this, but regardless of what the outcome would have been from the election, I think people would still sort of be in this limbo state right now, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing what the future holds for the economy, for interest rates, for housing prices, for housing stock. So right now, when you hear, people like myself or other YouTubers or other people in the news make these predictions, just keep in mind that they definitely could change. And by mid-January or early February, things might be completely different. So we're going to work with the tools that we have, the data and the information that we have, and we're just going to make our best guess about where we think the market is going to go. So let's start off. Before we get into the article, I want to start off by talking about the the Fed and how they control interest rates and what they do. So the Fed came out just a couple of weeks ago and lowered the interest rate by 75 basis points in total. And I had a client that was looking at buying a house, and he goes, oh, I heard the Fed drop the rates. Is my rate going to go down by 0.75%? Well, unfortunately, no. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the main reason is that when the Fed lowers the interest rate, they are lowering the interest rate for the federal funds rate, which is the overnight rate that banks charge each other to lend money back and forth. It's not mortgage interest rates. Now, typically, those two rates kind of move in lockstep. So when the Fed does lower federal funds rates, typically we do see mortgage interest rates follow, but not all the time. And it's rare when they don't follow each other. And that's what we just witnessed just a couple weeks ago. And so what happened was the Fed lowered the federal funds rate, and mortgage interest rates did tick down a little bit in about the 2 weeks that followed that. There was an uptick in mortgage applications. Some people even started the refi process because, remember, some people had high 7s or even 8% interest rate. And when the rates dropped to, the sort of high 6s, well, that's a pretty big savings. And then what happened? Well, mortgage interest rates went up, even though the Fed rate went down after a couple of weeks. And you think, well, what's that about? And again, the Fed is concerned about keeping the economy at this, very, temperate level, right? So the Fed is concerned about having an economy that's not too overheated and one that's not, too ice cold. So they want to try to keep it in the middle. And their biggest tool for that is interest rates. And I'm not going to go into why that is or any of that. And it's a whole nother video, a whole nother stream. And you can talk to a financial guru or a mortgage lender, and they'll tell you all that in more in depth than I could. But essentially what happened is mortgage interest rates didn't follow the Fed's fund rate. And again, that's rare. So what happened is we had mortgage interest rates actually go up. And the Fed is doing that based on a lot of different economic data, mainly inflation and unemployment. And inflation ended up ticking up a little bit, and unemployment was a little bit stronger than they thought. And when people are, when they're working and inflation is high, people are spending money, the Fed likes to kind of pump the brakes on the economy because we don't want it to get overheated, because that can lead to a couple different outcomes that aren't good, mainly a rise in inflation again. So the Fed said, hey, everybody's working and people are spending a lot of money. We need to raise interest rates. And long story short, when the Fed raises interest rates, essentially what that does is that causes businesses to maybe not take a line of credit to expand. It puts the freeze on companies hiring because maybe they can't get the capital from a business loan to hire new people or expand their business. So we see that the Fed said, hey, markets, the economy is a little hot, not overheated, but it's getting warm. So we need to pull some levers and we need to raise interest rates. And that's the spot that we're in. And, it's been a little bit crazy because interest rates have done one of, these things. It's like the crazy roller coaster. So we're hoping that at least mortgage rates will stabilize because when they go up and down, it really hurts the consumer confidence level, because consumers feel like they don't know what's going to happen. So, and that's what this first article is talking about that we're going to dig into right now. So this is from CNBC. This came out last Friday on the 15th. As you guys know, I try to keep it current. So this one is pretty recent. And mortgage rates may be stabilizing after the election. Here's what to expect into early 2025. So the key points of the article that we're going to go over: the average 30-year fixed mortgage in the U.S. slightly dipped to 6.78% for the week ending November 14, barely changed from 6.79% a week prior, according to Freddie Mac data via the Federal Reserve. So I like how they say U.S. slightly dipped by what is that, a hundredth of a percent? Really very slightly indeed. That stabilization may be a good sign for the housing market, which I don't disagree with. When rates are moving around a lot, it makes a lot of uncertainty in the market, said Jessica Lotz, Deputy Chief Economist and Vice President of Research at the National Association of Realtors. And, kind of makes a lot of sense, right? When rates are moving around, consumers feel like the ground beneath them is shifting and they don't know what that means. And quite frankly, they don't have the confidence to go out and make a big purchase like a car or a home in this case. So when interest rates move around, it creates some doubt and some uncertainty in consumers. And I don't blame them. If I wasn't sure what was going to happen, I wouldn't plunk down 5, 6, 7, 800,000 or more, depending on where you are, for a house. So we're hoping that at least interest rates stabilizing will bring some of that confidence back to consumers, even though rates are still on the higher end. So mortgage rates seem to have steadied. That may be a good sign for the market, experts say. The average 30-year fixed rate mortgage in the US slightly dipped to 6.78% for the week ending November 14th, barely changed from 6.79% a week prior. Even though it's higher than it has been over the course of several weeks, it's probably good news for home buyers, said Jessica Lotz, Deputy Chief Economist and Vice President of Research at the National Association of Realtors. So here we have the interest rates. And I really honestly feel like covering the left half of this graph because it hurts a little bit, as a real estate agent, but also just as someone who knows the struggles that home buyers are going through right now. It's really quite remarkable to see where we were just a short 5 years ago and to where we are now. And of course, a lot has changed in those 5 years. That goes without saying. I'm not going to bring up the C word or the P word, but a lot has changed in that time. But you can kind of see what happened. I mean, January 7th, 2021, look at that, 2.65%. That's probably, and I don't know if this is correct, but just based on my knowledge and my memory, I believe that's the lowest that interest rates have ever been. Someone can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But just, almost 4 short years later, we're up here at 6.78%. So you can see kind of what happened. We had a little dip September, we got to 6.09%. That's when Feds cut the rates. So this time was when the Fed started to cut the rates, which is why these went down. And here we go. We ticked right back up. And that had to do with the economic data that I was talking about, the high employment figures and inflation not really being exactly where the Federal Reserve wants. Remember, the Fed really wants to see that inflation at or below 2%. That is a lofty goal. Historically, we've been able to stay there. But in this day and age, with all the printing of money we did during the COVID pandemic for stimulus, it's going to be difficult to get that inflation rate back down. And again, the main lever is these interest rates. So what we would like to see is, you can see there's some bands here. Every one of these bands is a 0.5% in interest. And what we'd like to see is, we at least like to see the rates stay in one of these bands. So we'd like to see the rates at least stay between 6.5 and 7. Of course, lower is better, but we'd at least like to see them stay in a band. And as you can tell, for a long time, that happened. If you go back from May of 2019, really pretty much until about February of 2020, so about a year, they stayed in one band. They stayed within about 0.5%, and even longer, they stayed in 2 bands. So if we look over at the right side of this chart, you can see we were way up here, and then we went way down here, and then we went back up a little bit. So this is a band, this is a band, this is a band. That's 4 bands that we were covering. And that is the type of uncertainty that consumers don't like. What do you got for me, David? This is an amazing chart. What a difference a few years makes. Yeah, it hurts a little bit. I'm sure my realtor colleagues that are watching and some of the buyers out there that might be watching the stream right now are wincing a little bit in some pain, but that's okay. It's understandable, and we can all commiserate together. And I'm sure there's a couple people out there in the stream right now that remember January 7th, 2021. They refied to 2.65%. They got rid of their 4% loan. They went down to 2.65%, and they still have it. And they are enjoying their extremely low rate. And if you're one of those people in the chat, congratulations. You are the lucky beneficiary of what we call the golden handcuff. So I hope you're not planning on moving anytime soon, because nobody would want to cough up that amazing rate. And that's part of the reason that we have the inventory shortage that we do. And we've beat this horse to death on my channel and in my live stream. So we're not going to go through that. But congratulations to you if you're one of the lucky recipients of a 2.65% interest rate. When rates are moving around a lot, it makes a lot of uncertainty in the market, Laut said. Mortgage rates declined this fall in anticipation of the first interest rate cut since March 2020. But then borrowing costs jumped again this month as the bond market reacted to Donald Trump's election win. And so that's an important part that I haven't really touched on is the bond market. So, we talked about the federal funds rate. We talked about how when the federal funds rate goes down, usually the mortgage interest rate goes down, but not always. And what's funny is a lot of people, will link those two things together, which, is correct. But what has a bigger bearing on mortgage interest rates is actually the bond market. So the fact that the bond market reacted to Donald Trump's election win caused a reaction in the mortgage interest rates. And there's reasons for that. Again, we're not going to go into that. That was kind of the last stream that we had. If you're wondering what Trump's policies might do to the housing market, check out my last stream. So, on my channel, go to live, and it's the previous one. You can't miss the thumbnail. It's Donald Trump shooting laser beams from his eyes. So you won't be able to miss it. And there's a lot of good info on that one about what we think Trump may do and how his policies might affect the housing market moving forward. While the president-elect has talked about bringing mortgage rates down, presidents do not control borrowing costs for home loans, experts say. And yeah, this isn't just according to experts, that's actually fact. Any president from the United States cannot control mortgage interest rates or the federal funds rate. That's the Fed's job. And the Fed is an independent body that is not controlled by any branch of government. They sort of act independently. And that's obviously so that no one person or group of people could affect the Fed for their own gain. So the Fed is like this little tiny tribe of independent people that are all made up of economists and bankers and people that are much smarter than I when it comes to finance and money. And they set the economic policy for the nation so that we keep our economy in check. So that is true. If you, unfortunately, if you're a Donald Trump supporter and you're feeling like his election win is going to bring down interest rates, chances are you're wrong. Now, what I will say is it's possible that the president can enact some economic policy that might change some of the figures and might allow the Fed to lower or raise interest rates, but the president does not have any direct control or effect on mortgage interest rates or the federal funds rate. Instead, mortgage rates closely track Treasury yields and are partially affected by what happens with the federal funds rate. So again, that's true. Federal funds rate has something to do with it, but the Treasury yields, which is the bond market, that's really is what affects the mortgage interest rates. They foresee, and when we say they're talking about the Treasury and bond markets and investors that are heavy into bonds and treasuries. They foresee inflationary policies, whether it's tariffs or greater government spending, the tax bill, they're pricing in more inflation, said James Tobin, president and CEO of the National Association of Home Builders. As the bond market reacts, mortgage rates are going to react to that too. So one of the concerns, as you can see from the president of the NAHB, they have some concerns that Donald Trump's policies could lead to even more inflation. And right now, inflation is that's like the no-no word in the U.S. economy. I mean, I don't think average everyday Americans have been so sensitive to the word inflation since probably the 80s. And inflation has been on a roll ever since about mid-2022. And that's when interest rates started to shoot way up because, again, interest rates are the lever that the Fed can pull to bring inflation back into check. And that's why interest rates shot up in June of 2022 and didn't come down until, just a couple weeks ago. So the reason that we're seeing this little uptick in interest rates recently, even though the Fed has cut rates, is because the bond market and the Treasury investors feel like that some of President-elect Trump's economic policies are going to cause some inflation, which could happen. Again, we don't know. It's our best guess, but they're foreseeing that, man, if Donald Trump does go through and hey, 20 to 40% tariffs on everything, and 100% tariffs on everything from China, those tariffs are going to increase the cost for the companies and sellers that own those products. So if something comes from China, let's just say it's a baseball. Baseball gets made, comes to China, it comes from China, and it costs $1, and there's 100% tariff. That means it's actually going to cost now $2. So obviously that retailer that goes to sell that baseball is going to pass that increased cost onto the consumer. They're not just going to eat that cost. And then that's where we get the inflation fears that we're seeing in the bond and treasury market. And that's what's causing interest rates to increase or show signs of increasing. And that's why we had a little uptick in mortgage rates. It's also important to realize that mortgage rates oftentimes act ahead of the actual news. So it certainly is operated based on a rumor mill. So if there's a rumor, just like this one, we don't know if Trump's policies are actually going to cause inflation. We don't know if Trump is actually going to go through with the tariff talks that he has talked about. But there's a rumor. And so whenever there's rumors in the finance and economy world, well, interest rates act almost immediately to that. And that's why we're seeing the change now, even though technically he's not the president yet and none of his policies have gone into effect. Less volatility can be a good sign, said Chen Zhao, chief economist at Redfin, an online real estate brokerage. High volatility by itself actually pushes mortgage rates even higher above treasury yields, Zhao said. More stable rates also means that home buyers don't have to worry during their home search about what their budget allows for changing. And that's a really, really good point. And we've seen this happen in the past. And what has happened is that you had people that were saying, hey, I got to buy a home. Whether or not these interest rates suck is one thing, whether or not prices are high, whatever. But people always need to buy and sell a home for a myriad of reasons. You know, there could be a death in the family. There could be a marriage in the family. There could be a divorce in the family. There could be a new birth, a new addition to the family, or maybe, 2 or 3 kids in the last 4 years went off to college and now empty nesters need to downsize. So there's always things that will cause people to move. And what we saw happening during these times where the interest rates were really volatile, these buyers would say, hey, you know what? Let's just say, for instance, it's May. It's May. And the buyers, they say, we're going to buy a home this summer during the prime season. And they go get their pre-approval. They talk to their lender. They figure out their budget, their finances, all that stuff. And the lender says, hey, you're pre-approved for $500,000 at 6.25%. Okay, great. So they go out there, they start house hunting. They're looking. Takes 6 weeks, takes a month and a half, maybe 2 months for them to find the home. They find the home, they put an offer in, and they check in with their lender. Lender goes, actually, when I gave you that pre-approval, the rates were 6.25, but now the rates are 6.75. And your $500,000 pre-approval now is only good for about $470,000. So that $495,000 property, I'm sorry, but you can't afford it anymore. And that's one of the biggest problems with the volatility in the rates. Not only do you get consumers that aren't confident, but you get consumers that feel like they got the rug pulled out beneath them because things change so quickly. And those rates can certainly affect the budget of home buyers. So that's another reason that we're hoping that there will be a little bit less volatility in the interest rates as we move into the 2025 season, so that hopefully buyers can at least count on the rate that they were quoted when they started their home buying search. Trump's team did not respond to a request for comment. Okay, well, whatever. Don't expect huge swings on mortgage rates. Probably a good thing. Election uncertainty contributed to an upward swing in mortgage rates during October. Then rates went up even more last week as the stock market and yields reacted to the election results. So we saw the stock markets went crazy. The treasury yields reacted. I mean, heck, even Bitcoin got shot out of a cannon. I don't know if there's any crypto kids in the chat, but oh my gosh, if you own Bitcoin, congratulations to you because you made some money. Also, if you were just in the S&P or any stock market, you did pretty well as well. So it was a good time for markets. And subsequently, that means that it was not a great time for mortgage interest rates because major investors, corporate investors are going, hey, the stock market's returning a bunch of money. Why would I buy mortgages when I could just put my money in the stock market and make way more money way faster? And that's one of the reasons that we led to higher interest rates. The 10-year Treasury yield jumped 15 basis points on November 6th, closing to trade at 4.43%, hitting the highest level since July, as investors bet a Trump presidency would increase economic growth along with fiscal spending. The yield on the 2-year Treasury was up by 0.073 basis points to 4.276% that day, reaching its highest level since July 31. But now we have a president-elect. Now that we have a president-elect, mortgage rates are expected to gradually come down over time, Laut said. From a monetary policy standpoint, future rate cuts are up in the air. And we've heard about this. The Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, which is like probably a household name by now because he's affecting the economy so much. And I will say, I do this a couple times. I've done this a couple times in the streams. Everybody loves to hate Jerome Powell. Everybody loves to hate the Fed because, unfortunately, out of necessity, they've had to inflict some pain on the everyday American by raising interest rates. However, the Fed and Jerome Powell have an excruciatingly difficult job. It's really, really hard to control an economy the size of the United States. And we're a huge country and we have a huge GDP and there's a lot to look out for. And quite honestly, did Jerome Powell maybe wait too long to lower rates? Yeah, maybe, but hindsight's always 2020 and we'll never know. So in my opinion, I actually think Jerome Powell has done an okay job. I think the Fed has done an okay job. It's a very difficult task that they were handed after the COVID pandemic. And I think that he deserves quite a bit of credit because at this point, they have navigated us into this soft landing, which was their goal. And a lot of people thought this is going to be impossible. A soft landing, we're going to go into a full-blown recession, which, knock on wood, has not happened yet. And hopefully it won't happen. But in my book, I think Jerome Powell is doing okay along with the rest of his Fed friends. Yeah, David. So we agree on this. I think he does have a tough job and I think he's done pretty well at it. Obviously, Donald Trump doesn't think so because Donald Trump said, I'm going to call Jerome Powell into my office and I'm going to fire him, which, again, the president can't do. So exactly, David. He did act a little bit late. I think it was probably an overabundance of caution. I think he was a little bit afraid. This is what I think. And this is, I'm simply just a layman, and I'm pontificating. I have no data or anything for this. This is just a theory that I have. So all you people watching the replay, they're going to leave me nasty comments. I'm telling you right now, I don't know for certain. But what I think happened during that is I think the Fed was a little bit wary of a double dip recession type thing. I think they were a little wary of lowering the interest rates too quickly and then seeing more inflation and seeing prices actually go up even higher and then having rates have to go up again. So I do think they probably waited a little too long, but I think that was probably the safe conservative play. And I think ultimately, as like we said, David, we didn't go into a recession. We haven't yet. So you can't really call him wrong. And you can't really say he did a bad job because he avoided a recession, which for the last about 2 years has been the entire goal of his existence. From a monetary policy standpoint, future rate cuts are up in the air. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said Thursday that strong U.S. economic growth will allow policymakers to take their time in deciding how far and how fast to lower interest rates. And in fact, I think Mr. Powell said it might have been the day this article came out. I think it was Friday, right around when this article came out, which is probably why they didn't mention this. But he said, hey, we are probably going to take a much slower approach to lowering interest rates. And it was thought that they were going to get one more interest rate cut in December. And now we're really not sure if that's going to happen. Again, my thought is that it probably is not going to happen. But we can go to the CME group and we can see what the stats are on that. His job is tough because Congress won't act responsibly and do their job. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there, David, right? He's kind of handcuffed with what he can do, right? And especially with Congress just spending money left and right and having to raise the deficit ceiling and the national debt. Oh, it's crazy. They got to get it under control. All right. So if the Fed continues to ease the federal funds rate, which again, that's not mortgage rates, the federal funds rate is the overnight bank rate, which is the rate that banks lend money to each other at. It could provide indirect downward pressure on mortgage rates, according to NAHB chief economist Robert Dietz. However, improved growth expectations would lead to higher rates, as would larger government deficits. So if the economy does do well, and we have a lot of people employed and people are spending money and all of those things, then it's quite possible that interest rates won't be lowered as quickly or as far. So again, I hate to provide information that is so wishy-washy, and I wish I had something clear for you all. You can see in the verbiage of this article alone, almost every time there's like, oh, and rates could go down when this happens. And then the very next sentence is, or rates could go up if this happens. Like the moral of the story is we don't know. And this is all an educated guess. And this is all based on statistics and hypotheses from, quite frankly, a lot of really smart people. So just, again, keep that in mind, that whenever you're looking into this information, this data, whether it's coming from me or another real estate YouTuber, just keep in mind that this is all just a very educated guess, and things could certainly change. And it could be that things could change 2 short months from now. It could be mid-January and we could be in a different spot. So just keep that in mind. Experts say that mortgage rates might head into a bumpy or volatile path over the next year. I don't think that there's going to be any huge swings down into the 5% range. Dang it. I was hoping for the 5% range, right? Everything would open up, it'd go crazy. If we did see 5% interest rates, even if it was 5.99, I don't even 5.0. If we saw 5.99, I think that you need to buckle up, because I think a lot of people would start selling and a lot of people would start buying, especially with the recent taste of 7 and 7.5 and 8% mortgage interest rates. All of a sudden, 5.99 sounds real good. Our expectation is that rates are going to be in the 6% range as we move into 2025, which, hey, we'll take that. Now, 6% is a big range, right? Is it 6.2 or is it 6.8? Because those few tenths of a point really do make a huge difference when it comes to spending, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 or more on a home. How buyers, sellers, and homeowners can benefit. Rates that are trending lower can present an opportunity for buyers who have been house hunting for a while, especially as the winter season kicks in. Competition tends to slow down in the winter months, in part because home buyers with children are in the middle of the school year and reluctant to move, Lout said. And I agree. I agree completely with the sentiment. David, he's a realtor in the chat right now, and I would love, David, I'd love your take on what I'm about to say. But I was having lunch today with a lender that I've worked with, and we were talking about how we're really trying to, not encourage people to buy right now, but we're trying to convey to them that right now is probably one of the best buyers markets we've had in the last 4 or 5 years. And so if you are a home buyer that is in the position to purchase a home, and you've got that down payment saved up, you have your emergency savings, you understand the payment that you can afford, you've done your research, and you're actively looking at a home, I would highly advise that if a home comes up that ticks the boxes that's in the budget, you certainly do at least make an attempt to buy it, or at least give it a real good thought about pursuing the property, because during this time of year, there's just less competition amongst home buyers, because it's November 20th. People are thinking about Thanksgiving and turkey and mashed potatoes and football, and then Christmas and all the other holidays that we have. I think I read a stat that says between now and January 10th, there's like 16 different recognized holidays, right? So people just aren't in the mode to be looking for houses. So if you are a buyer out there, now could be a really, really good time. And it doesn't look like rates are going to get much lower as we go into 2025. So you don't need to worry about missing the boat. And besides, if they do go lower, you can just refinance. So if you're someone who's contemplating buying a home right now and you're in the position to be able to pull the trigger, you might want to think about it, because it could be a really, really excellent time to do so. And If you guys need an agent, I'm in Southern California, I'm in Claremont, I'm in the Los Angeles area. And even if you're not from my area and you're watching from somewhere in Tennessee, I have a network of realtors all over the place, just like my buddy David Matney in Omaha. I've got a network of realtors all over the place that I work with, that I know, that I talk to, and I can find you a really, really good local realtor that's going to be able to do a good job for you. So there's in the description of the video, there's a link. You can click that link, and we can connect, and I can get you connected with a very good real estate agent. All right, David, let's see if you agree with me or not. Survey says, oh, that's the wrong one. I would agree. Inventory is up. Buyers are doing inspections. Sellers are making repairs. Good time to look at new construction too. Prices tend to go up after the first of the year. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's a really, that one little line, buyers are doing inspections. It's crazy to think, David, that so many home buyers just didn't even, they were like, fine, I don't need to do an inspection if it gets me the house. Waive the inspection, no inspection, no inspection. That to me like blows my mind that someone would buy a house and not have a home inspection. Extremely risky. And now we're getting to the point where buyers now have the luxury, which is not even a luxury, but buyers have a luxury that they can now look at a home, think about if they want to make an offer, make the offer, face less competition, and they don't have to waive all their contingencies. And then on top of that, there's a very good chance that you're going to be able to negotiate either some repairs or credits from the seller if something does come up on that home inspection report. So that is a great point, David. I kind of figured you might agree with me. So, all right. Hey, Pam. So I gotta let everybody know. So my mom is in the chat tonight. Pam is my mom. So everybody welcome my mom into the live stream. This is her first time commenting, I think, on a YouTube video. So go, Mom. You did it. You figured it out. Congratulations. Hey, Joe, do you think foreign purchase of U.S. real estate will be affected by Trump policies? I haven't seen anything directly related in Trump's, economic or housing plan that would affect foreign purchases in real estate. And we actually saw in about 2014 or so that there was some laws that were put into place. And it was a combination of laws in the US, but also laws in China, where it made it more difficult to move money out of China. And therefore that kind of slowed down some of the international and foreign buyers. But long story short, do I think foreign purchase of U.S. real estate will be affected by Trump policies? Probably not, unless he comes out with something that would make it harder for foreign entities to purchase homes. Do I think that that's something that needs to be looked at? In my personal opinion, yes, I do. And I'm not saying that because I don't want international home buyers. But if you look at all across the nation where non-citizens can buy properties, it's not very common, right? You either need to be a citizen or you have to have some type of a business or economic tie to that country. Whereas here in the U.S., if you've got the money, you can purchase a house. So I do think that probably some of the regulations could afford to change on that to give some of our American home buyers a slightly easier time of home buying. But again, this is also too very similar to like the corporate investors, right? Everybody loves to hate on international home buyers, immigrant home buyers, and corporate investor home buyers. And I understand why. I get it. But you have to realize that the amount of homes that were purchased by institutional investors, it's like less than 2% in the entire nation. Now, can it affect pockets of areas? Yes, because those investors are buying up neighborhoods in some of the more rural areas, like in Georgia. Some of the institutional investors are buying up like houses by like 20 and 30 and 40 at a time. And it certainly is affecting that area. But on a national scale, on a national home buying price point, those three groups of people that I just mentioned, they're not really having much effect on the home buying market. So excellent question, Mom. But no, I think as of right now, unless something comes out, I don't believe that Trump's policies will affect foreign home buyers. Okay, so we talked about that. Okay, so current homeowners can also make the most of lower rates. Well, of course they can. For example, if you bought your home around this time last year when mortgage rates peaked at 8%, you might benefit from a mortgage refinance, Lout said. And this is a great example. Like a year ago, people had an 8% rate if they were buying, very, very high. And now all of a sudden we saw it dip down to 6.1 or 6.08%. And heck, that's almost a 2% discount. And if you did buy a home when rates were at 8%, chances are you weren't having to compete very much because buyers were scared off. And this is why it's always a good thing to keep in mind that if rates do go down, you can reap the benefits of that. But I'm not going to use the stupid phrase that I hate so, so much. Please don't date the rate and marry the house. You do need to realize that the rate might not go down and you actually might have to marry the rate because it might go up. So keep that in mind. That's saying that phrase so dumb. I'm never going to say it again. That was the one time that I said it on the stream. Never going to say it again. It makes sense to consider a refinance if rates have fallen 1 to 2 points since you took out the loan. Jeff Ostrowski, a housing expert at Bankrate.com, told CNBC after the Fed's first rate cut this fall. And you really do need it to be around 1 to 2% because there is a cost to refinance. And if you just hit up any good lender that isn't brain dead, they'll be able to tell you if it's worth it for you to refinance or not based on your current rate, your current equity, and what the new rate that you could potentially get will be. Remember that a loan refinance isn't free. See, look, I know what I'm talking about. You may incur associated costs such as closing costs and appraisal and title insurance. While the total cost will depend on your area, a refinance is going to cost between 2% and 6% of the loan amount. Jacob Channels, an economist at LendingTree, said at that time. If you're pondering on whether to refi or not, look at what's going on with rates, reach out to lenders, and see if refinancing makes sense for you. Homeowners have earned record home equity. U.S. homeowners with mortgages have a net homeowner equity of over 17.6 trillion in the second quarter of 2024, according to CoreLogic. Home equity increased in the second quarter of this year by 1.3 trillion, an 8% growth from a year prior, which is absolutely insane. That's a huge amount of equity and a huge amount of growth. And that right there, this amount of homeowner equity is one really simple, solid reason that there's not going to be a mass crash in home prices or home values. It's just not going to happen because a lot of people have a ton of equity in their home. And when you have equity in your home, you don't have a foreclosure. You just sell the house if you need to even. Keep in mind, most people have rates under 5%. And a lot of people, I'd have to look up the stat, but I think it's somewhere around 30% or so of all homes in the United States don't even have a mortgage. So they own it free and clear, and they're not even paying a monthly payment. Therefore, interest rates mean nothing to those people. If you're looking to sell your current home, you may be able to counteract slightly high borrowing costs on your next property by placing a larger down payment, Lout said, which is hilarious. This stuff like this is like, oh, if you want to get your payment lower and you're worried about high interest rates, just put more money down. Okay, yeah, let me just do that real quick. Let me just go into the room and just pull out another bag of cash for you. If it was that easy, everybody would do it. So it's kind of interesting with how that stuff works. So I'm going to switch over to the next article. So, what do you guys think? I think there's a poll on the YouTube channel, which unfortunately I can't see it through my streaming software, but let me see if I can pull it up really quick because I'm interested to see, what you guys are thinking and saying. Let's see what we've got here. I don't even know if I can see my own live as it's on. Let's see. Yeah, I can. 40% think interest rates will stabilize. Think interest rates will drop. And 20% think interest rates will go up. Okay, interesting to know what you guys think is going to happen. We'll check in again with that towards the end of the stream. So the kind of the next article that we have is from NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors. I don't like using NAR as a source, not because they're not good. I actually think their data is very good, But everybody assumes that because I'm a real realtor, and this is from the National Association of Realtors, that this is somehow going to, be slanted towards everybody buy a home now. Which I will tell you that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm laughing at my wife waving to my mom in the chat. Oh, good. I'm not one of those realtors that's going to say, hey, everybody needs to buy a home now. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to afford one. I don't think that's the case. In fact, I think that you need to do what's right for you in the position that you're in. However, this was a really good prediction article about what they think might happen into 2025. So we'll go over this one pretty quickly so that you guys can see maybe, what we're talking about. This one came out November 11th, so about 10 days ago. And I'm going to get this one up on the screen right now. There we go. The last 2 years have been tough for many people who work in the home sales or who were in the market to buy or sell, but the worst may be over. Lawrence Yun, chief economist of the National Association of Realtors, told a crowd of real estate professionals during NAR NXT, the Realtor Experience in Boston on Friday. Now, Lawrence Yun, he's the chief economist for NAR, and this guy knows his stuff. I look a lot of his data, a lot of his stats, a lot of his information, and he's good. He's on it. So I always like when I see his name brought up, because typically he's just spitting the data, and that's what we need. And that's what we need to hear about so that we can make informed decisions. Yoon released a rosier forecast for the housing market for 2025 and 2026, with an outlook for higher home sales and moderating mortgage rates. Also speaking at Friday's Residential Economic Issues and Trends Forum, NAR's Deputy Chief Economist Jessica Lautz, who we just heard from, shared new NAR data that looked at who's buying homes today. The data shows growth in all cash buyers, multi-generational purchases, and single buyers. So this last one's kind of interesting. All cash, obviously, all cash buyers, they're always out there, right? They just got bags of money. They don't care about interest rates. They can put their bag of money on the table and outbid everyone and get the home. So not super surprising that their data is showing growth in that sector, but multi-generational purchases. So multi-generational means that there's going to be several generations of the family in that home. And I'm not surprised to see this. And if anything, I think we're going to see more of this as people start to pool resources together to buy a home and lock in their stable housing. And quite honestly, this is multi-generational housing is nothing new. And in fact, in a lot of places in, east of here in Europe and Asia, multi-generational living is like the norm, and that's what you do. And you might have, the grandparents, the parents, and the kids all living under one roof. And that way you can pool resources, you can pool funds, and you can potentially, be able to buy the house and have secure living and not have to be subjected to raising rents, or being kicked out. And single buyers is kind of interesting. Don't know where single buyers are getting the money to buy a house. So that's the most interesting. All cash buyers, that makes sense. Multi-generational, that makes sense. And that's probably going to go up. Single buyers, that's kind of interesting to me. I'd like to see the data on that, just because, buying a house on one income, good for you if you can do that. Well done if you're in that position. No matter where you are in the United States, if you can buy a house on a single income, you are doing things correctly. So congratulations. Yeah, I agree, David. I see multi-generations as the future. I agree. I think we're going to start to see more people under one roof. I think already in California, where I am, in Southern California, we've seen tons of ADUs, accessory dwelling units, commonly referred to as guest houses, granny flats, or back houses, have taken off. They changed some laws and some legislations. They now are much easier to build. They're easier to finance. They're easier to install. And we're seeing that a lot of people are going that route so they can put mom and dad in the ADU, and that way they can sell their house, get rid of that mortgage payment or those taxes, or whatever the case may be, and move in there. So multi-generational, I think, definitely has a very bright future in the home buying market of the United States. Definitely. On the selling side, homeowners are feeling richer from the rapidly rising prices over the past few years. Now, more listings are coming up for sale, and the economy is seeing improvement. All those factors could get more Americans moving in the year end, he said. Further, this week marked the conclusion of a contentious presidential election. And we all know that during elections, people don't like to make big decisions because they don't know what's going to happen, especially the last few election cycles we've had where, as they so eloquently put, it was a little contentious. But now that's done, that's behind us, and we can kind of move forward. We've seen after presidential elections, and it doesn't matter who wins, that there's usually a slight boost in home sales. Yoon said it removes some uncertainty. Now you know it's the policy, in this case of President Trump, and you can make predictions about what will happen and make a decision based on that. Again, remember, home buyers, they're like they're like wild deer. They're very skittish, and if you make any quick movements, any sudden movements, they'll run off. And that's how home buyers are when it comes to economic data, politics, and election cycles. Any big movements, and home buyers are like, no, can't do it. I'm gonna put the brakes on. I'm gonna wait. So now that that's behind us, hopefully it should motivate people to finally get off the sidelines, make a decision, and stop sitting on the fence. Here's an overview of NAR's predictions on key housing indicators for the year ahead. And as I'm about to take a drink of my water, what do you guys think about what's going to happen in 25 when it comes to not interest rates, but the actual housing market? Do you think inventory is going to go up? Do you think more buyers are going to flock to the market? Do you think that the overall turnover in home sales is going to increase? Let me know what you think. Okay. Home sales to rise. Now, I wonder if that means the number of home sales or the price. Let's find out. With improving job numbers and recent gains in the stock market, more Americans may be motivated to act, Yoon said. Yoon predicts an uptick of nearly 2 million jobs for 2025 and another nearly 2 million increase in 2026, which could bode well for the housing market. After all, when people have jobs and they're working, well, they've got money to buy a home. So certainly jobs will help with the people's ability to afford a home. 2023 and 2024 were both difficult years in the housing market, Yoon said, but pending home sales eked out a 3% year-over-year gain in September, he said, a signal that is maybe the worst is over. Other good signs? Inventory of both new and existing homes is increasing, and the U.S. population has grown by 70 million from 1995, even though home sales have remained mostly at 1995 levels, signaling pent-up demand. And that inventory, we're starting to see it. And again, that's why we were talking about inventory going up right now. We're having a nice pop in inventory. And that's why we were talking about earlier that it could be a great time to buy a home if you're in that position. I'm not just going to make a blanket statement that says right now is a great time for anybody to buy a home. That would be foolish. But if you're in that mindset, if you've been thinking about doing it and the finances are in the right spot, this is a great reason why buying a home right now could pay off, because inventory has crept up and it looks like it's going to continue to creep up a little bit, which hopefully will bring some relief to home buyers. Here's Yoon's forecast over the next 2 years. 2025 sales projection, existing home sales to rise 9% year over year, new home sales to jump by 11%. And this is in volume, not price. So don't freak out. Existing home sales prices aren't going to go up 9%. That would be insane as a homeowner. Cool for me, but for the market, probably not good. So just to see a 9% increase and 11% increase in volume would be a huge boost. 2026 sales projection, existing home sales to rise 13% year over year and new home sales to increase by 8% every year. So again, 2025, 2026, looking like we're going to see some more turnover. We're going to see some more inventory, and hopefully we're going to see some more stable interest rates. And hopefully all of that means that we get back to a slightly more normal housing market. Do you guys remember what it used to be like in 2017, 2018, 2019, when you didn't have to beat the crap out of someone to get your offer accepted or to buy a home? Wasn't it nice? It was just calm and predictable, and nobody worried about what interest rates were doing. So hopefully we can get a little bit closer back to that type of market. David's got a prediction. David the Great, What's your prediction? Here's my prediction. Sales will increase, prices increase slightly, interest rates in the 6 to 7% range as per my crystal ball. There we go, David. I don't disagree with you. I think all that's right on. I do think sales will increase. I think we are going to see price increases slightly. I think they're going to be a little bit more towards the normal appreciation year over year. So I think we're going to see that, 2 to 3% price increase. Just for context, in the last several years, we saw price increases of 10 to 20% year to year. So, 2 to 3% is much more modest and reasonable than 10 to 20%. Again, great if you're a homeowner, but if you're a home buyer, yikes, that's tough. So I'm right with you, David. I'm right with you. And hopefully it happens. Mortgage rates to moderate. The trajectory of mortgage rates will have a major bearing on the housing market, on how the housing market will fare, Yoon said. According to Freddie Mac, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgages range from 6.08% to 7.44% over the past 52 weeks. So over the past 52 weeks, about a year, to have a spread of, let's just make math easy, 1.5%. That is gigantic. That is enormous. That is almost unfathomable to have a spread of 1.5% in about a year in mortgage interest rates is crazy. And any mortgage lender or broker will agree, and they'll say they've probably never seen interest rate swings like that in any type of recent history. So interesting how that works. Yoon says that rates should stabilize at the low end of that range for 2025 and 2026. And if it does stabilize in this lower end, that's going to be great. If we can have rates at a steady 6.25, 6.25, I think we're going to be fine. And like I said, if we get down to 5.99, things are going to go crazy. They're going to go crazy. On Thursday, the Federal Reserve announced its second rate cut of the year, reducing its short-term benchmark rate. We already kind of talked about that. But hopeful buyers who may be waiting for lower mortgage rates likely won't see them anytime soon, Yoon said. Mortgage rates will not decline in tandem with the Fed's rate cut, he said, blaming the bloated budget deficit as the reason. With a large budget deficit, there's less mortgage money available. The government is borrowing so much of its money. A large budget deficit will prevent mortgage rates from going down to 4%, as they did during President Trump's first term. So again, kind of like Dave and I were talking about in the comments, we need Congress to kind of get their act together, and we got to get these people to stop spending so much dang money because it's going to help out the mortgage interest rates, because there will be more funds available to purchase mortgages, and therefore the rate can be lower. Factors that could change Yoon's forecast: a reduction in the budget deficit, an easing of housing regulations are holding up home builders. I think this one's pretty likely. I do think, and that's actually one of Trump's policies that he's outlined, where basically he said, I'm going to reduce the red tape. I'm going to reduce the regulations. I'm going to reduce how hard it is for builders to build a home, which obviously therefore means that if it's easier to build a home, it's going to be more cost effective, and that home should be more affordable. Or a significant increase in the labor force to help lower inflationary pressures. In such cases, mortgage rates could come down quickly. Nevertheless, the locked-in effect of homeowners feeling stuck in place with 2 and 3% mortgage rates from recent years will lessen over time, Yoon said. You'd pointed to the 3.5 million new babies being born each year, as well as the 1.5 million marriages, 700,000 divorces, and 3.5 million people turning 65, and 25 million job changes that takes place every year, all milestones that often trigger a move. Again, like I was talking about, doesn't matter what happens, there's always people buying and selling, and there are your reasons: babies being born, new marriages, divorces, people, aging and wanting to downsize or go into retirement facilities, leaving their home on the, putting their home on the market. And then of course, 25 million job changes, the relocation market for, changing for professional reasons. Home prices increase slowly after rapid rises. We kind of talked about that a little bit. Home prices shot up, they went crazy, and they've stabilized, which is good. The strong price increase cannot be sustainable for another 5 years, or America will be divided, with only a few getting the experience, with only a few getting to experience the tremendous housing wealth, Yoon said. If we bring more supply to the housing market, home price increases will not be as outrageous and will be more in line with wages. And honestly, that's really what we need. That's exactly what we need. We need home prices to be more in line with wages. Yoon's forecast, 2025 median home price, 410,700, up 2%. 2026, 420,000, up 2%. And this up 2%, that's normal. Again, during the COVID years, the pandemic years, we were seeing 10%, 12%, 16%, again, depending on markets, but huge appreciation gains, which again, great for home sellers and home owners, not so great for home buyers, especially first-time home buyers. If you're a first-time home buyer, you had no equity. You had no equity to help you buy the next home. You just had to save up the cash. Whereas if you were a move-up buyer, which was the position my wife and I found ourselves in 2022, we had a home that we bought before the pandemic. It went way up in value. On top of that, we improved it. And so that brought up the value. And then we were able to sell that home for a decently higher price than we paid for it. And then we were going to take all the profits from that home sale and then put them into a new home. So we didn't have to dip into, our savings account. I mean, we actually made money on it. So we were able to put a little bit of money into savings and also get a new home. And so, good if you're a home owner at the time, but if you're a first-time home buyer and you're seeing these price appreciations of 8%, 12%, 15%, I mean, you might as well stick a fork in you. You're done. There's no way that you're going to be able to keep up with that type of appreciation. So we certainly welcome 2% because, as David says, I think that will help it return to a much more normal market, which I think everybody wants to see. Even home sellers, because after all, if you sell a home, chances are you're going to turn around and have to buy another one. So I think all of us are craving for a little bit more normalcy when it comes to the real estate market. A different type of buyer emerges. The profile of home buyers are changing, Laut said, presenting data from NAR's newly released 2024 profile of home buyers and sellers. Here's a few of the changes in the observed report. More buyers are skipping the mortgage. With the sizable housing equity gains many owners have experienced, all cash buyers have surged to record highs, accounting for 26% of home sales over the past year. 31% of repeat buyers paid all cash for the next home purchase. And not only is it just all cash buyers, but again, like the position that I was in, you're having more buyers have this equity that's going to allow them to put huge down payments. One of the colleagues I work with, he bought a home in, I think it was 2021 or 2022. He was able to put 40% down because he had so much equity from the sale of his other home. So yeah, he's not a cash buyer, but imagine buying a house with 40% down. What's that going to do for you? You're instantly walking into a ton of equity, plus your mortgage payment is going to be very, very manageable in comparison to the price of the property. First-time buyers are getting older. Yes, the median age of first-time home buyers was 38, an all-time high. They're having to save for a longer period of time, or maybe wait for the bank of mom and dad to give them the funds to buy, Laut said. 25% of first-time buyers used a gift or a loan from a relative or friend for their home purchase. 20% took money out of financial assets like stocks, 401ks, or cryptocurrency to afford home ownership, and 7% used inheritance money for their purchase, a record high. Lauts noticed first-time buyers are coming up with the highest down payments in nearly 30 years at 9% in order to afford the higher home prices. And home buyers now, the median age for home buyers being 38 doesn't surprise me. I do wish that it was lower. I think it would be better if it was lower. I think it'd be better for the overall U.S. economy and just for American consumer sentiment. But I'm not surprised. I mean, after all, people are graduating college later. People are getting married later. People are starting families later. People are getting into their careers later. So it could kind of make sense that they're getting into home buying later. But hopefully that number comes down a little bit. Do I think it will? Probably not. The allure of cities grows. The pandemic may have unleashed a trend of suburban movers, but people are now heading back to city centers, the largest uptick in a decade. Probably has a lot to do with return to office work and people going, oh, you know what? I'm locked down. I'm in the pandemic. I live in LA. I would love to go live, out in the rural area where I can afford a house and have all this room. And then they quickly realize, actually, I'm not close to any of my friends. I'm not close to any of my family. and I need to be back in the city for work. So we're seeing a resurgence of people going back to cities. More buyers are pooling their money. The number of multi-generational households surged at an all-time high of 17% over the past year. The number one reason is for cost savings, Lout said. They're combining incomes in order to afford home ownership. They're also buying a multi-generational home to take care of aging parents, or because of young adults, they're moving back home, Louts noted. And on top of this, not only are more buyers pulling their money to buy multi-generational houses, but we're seeing a rise in what we call co-buying a home, which is the term given to people who buy a home with someone who isn't their direct relative or their spouse. So co-buying would be like if I bought a house with my best friend, or if I bought a house with my uncle. Now, if I bought a house with my, fiance or my wife or my brother, that's not considered co-buying. That's just a traditional home buying purchase. But co-buying is on the rise. We're seeing more and more people buy homes with friends and unrelated or distantly related family members than we've ever seen before. And that's, again, same idea behind the multi-generational thing. They're simply trying to pool their assets and resources together in order to afford a home. Single women buyers continue to outpace single men buyers. Of course they do. Women are much more responsible than men. Men are reckless and they do dumb things and they make dumb purchases. And so single women buyers continue to outpace single men is not a surprise. And for quite some time, single women have gotten it. They figured it out. They've understood that home ownership is the path to financial success and true wealth. And single women have been outpacing men for probably the last 15 years or so. So go girls, a little bit of girl power for you. They're killing it when it comes to single ladies buying homes. Yeah, girl power. There you go. And it is true. I don't know what you're saying true to, David, but I'm starting to know you pretty well, David. And I think you're saying true to men being dumb and spending their money on stupid things. I think that's probably what you're saying true to. And if it is, obviously I agree. So that's kind of, the outlook of where we think 2025 could go. Again, like I said, nobody really knows, right? And these are all just guesses. These are all just hypotheses. And we'll just have to kind of see what actually ends up happening, because again, we can just make our best guess, but we don't really know. So before we sign off and get out of here, let's take a look at the poll. I have the poll up. Let's see. All right. So what do you think will happen to interest rates in 2025? 25% interest rates will stabilize. 50% think interest rates will drop. And 25% think interest rates will actually go up. That's interesting. Interesting to hear your guys' opinion and see what you guys think is going to happen. So like I said, I'm going to pull up a calendar really quick. We have Thanksgiving next week. I hope you all have some wonderful, or able to spend some time with your family and your friends, and you see everyone. There's an extremely high likelihood that I will not be streaming the evening before Thanksgiving. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be sort of caught up with things. So don't count on a stream next week. And before we sign off, I want to do one more thing. I'm going to share my screen really quick with you guys. Like I said, if you are in the market to buy a home and you need a really, really good real estate agent, go to workwithjoerealtor.com. I'm going to put it in the comments so that it's easy for you guys. And this is not my main website. This is just a basic landing page where you can go, you can learn just a little bit about me, and you can click on any one of these buttons here and you can book a time to chat with me and connect with me. So if you're thinking of buying a home and you need a good local real estate agent and you just don't know where to look, you don't trust Zillow, you don't trust Googling for your home purchase, you can go on my website, you can connect with me, and I will chat with you. I will figure out what your needs are, what you're looking for, and I will do research on the very best agent for your needs in your local area. Again, I have a network full of hundreds of real estate agents all across the nation that I work with and talk to and communicate with, and I can find you a really good, trusted real estate agent. Remember, 80% of real estate agents suck. 20% of real estate agents actually know what they're doing. Make sure you work with a 20% real estate agent, and I can help you do that. And if you're local to the Los Angeles area, anywhere in LA County, San Bernardino County, or Riverside County, I can help you directly and personally. So if you're looking to buy a home or sell a home in that area, go to the website, drop me a note, and I would love to speak with you and help you with your home buying or sale. Again, thanks for joining, guys. You guys have been excellent. We had a wonderful stream tonight. Tons of people commenting and chatting and watching. Viewership was excellent. I hope that you all have an excellent Thanksgiving. Thanks for spending some of your very, very valuable time with me. I really, really appreciate it. I'm probably not going to see you next week, but we'll be back the week after that with another phenomenal stream. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. I'll see y'all really